over the last couple of hours, we've had some great presentations. We've heard about the changing consumer dynamic. We've heard about the influence of social on professionals, on professional networking, on the IT business decision process. Mike left us with something of a framework for how to think about marketing in this new environment. Now I'm really happy to present and to ask David Hahn to come up. So David Hahn heads up LinkedIn Product. He's VP of LinkedIn Product. He's going to talk about the changing evolution of the LinkedIn platform, but specifically he's going to talk about the role of content. There's a larger and larger role that content's playing in the LinkedIn ecosystem, relevant and apropos to what was talked about this morning. After that, Mira Bhatia is going to come up and she'll talk about some ads products, and specifically she'll talk about engaging with some of the members and how to take all of the things we've learned this morning and turn that into meaningful relationships and engagement. So with that, I'm going to welcome up David Hahn. Thanks, folks.
Hello. I joined LinkedIn. I first started using LinkedIn actually a little over 8 years ago. I had come out from Washington, D.C., quit my job there, moved all of my personal belongings, which were few, out to the West Coast. And I started a job at a startup up in San Francisco. And there was one thing that this startup did particularly well. We failed fast. Within weeks of becoming officially part of the West Coast again, it was clear that the company was no longer going to exist. And so that's when I decided, of course, that this LinkedIn thing that a few people had been talking about in Silicon Valley, that it was probably time I checked it out. And so, again, this is back in 2005, so LinkedIn at that time, if we can go forward one, this is actually what LinkedIn looked like in 2005. So not a lot of style here, at least not a lot of style based on how we look at products to date, but certainly quite a bit of substance. And so I started building a network. I started doing everything that the sort of rudimentary flows and the big find out who button on the homepage told me to do. And it turns out I discovered some of the most important professional relationships in my life to date. I happen to be connected to many of the founding members of LinkedIn. And these were connections that, I kid you not, I had no idea that I had until I started using the LinkedIn product. And so, long story short, within a matter of weeks, I had gone from really an utter failure, a place where I was in San Francisco, thought I had just left a great job in Washington, D.C., and thought I had a pretty bleak future ahead of me, to what has been really a fantastic career opportunity. And so I'm very appreciative to the 2005 version of LinkedIn for that. So curious, by show of hands, how many folks in the room over the last couple of years have connected to a career opportunity because of LinkedIn? Just raise your hand. Okay, well, that's pretty good. I see a couple of timid hands. Remember, this is a LinkedIn conference, so we like the people that are raising hands. They get drinks or something later. You all get drinks later. So, what I want to talk about today, I want to talk about a couple of things today, but I think the most surprising thing for many of the folks in the room, given so many of you have experienced LinkedIn like I have through sort of this lens of connecting to a career opportunity, is that that's not the primary use case on LinkedIn anymore. And it really hasn't been for some time. And so what I want to walk through today is I want to tell you what has become the primary use case on LinkedIn, and talk to you a little bit about what's behind that trend, what's happened over the last couple of years. And then finally, I want to touch on why I think you guys should care, why you guys as B2B marketers should really care about that transformation that we've seen on LinkedIn. So with that, I want to start with our mission. Some of you may have heard this before, but for a long time, our objective is to really connect the world's professionals to make them more productive and successful. And of course, connecting people to their career opportunity is a core part of this. We're very proud of that, and we're going to continue to do that very well. But over the last couple of years, we've started to invest in a very specific area. And that is to help you be great at the job that you have today, So not just help with your next opportunity, but make sure that you're the best that you can be in your current seat, in your current role. And that's been, again, a big area of investment for us at LinkedIn over the last couple of years. And that really manifests itself in a couple of key properties. And I'm going to refer to them today as our key content properties. It's our influencers product, our groups product, our news product, and then, of course, our Slideshare acquisition. They make up the content properties that really deliver professional insight that we believe make professionals better at the job that they have today. And when you look at this, I just talked about kind of, to what extent are people either connecting with career opportunities or experiencing content. Just recently, we looked at the data and we said, hey, what does that balance look like today on LinkedIn? Well, it turns out that there's 5 times as much engagement today, that is, on LinkedIn around our content properties relative to people connecting with career opportunities at LinkedIn. So you see the result of the last few years of investment. You see the result of this shift that I'm going to talk about more today. And it's not just on LinkedIn. It's not just on LinkedIn relative to our own properties. Over the past couple of years, we've actually become one of the largest sources of business content on the web, period. So across the web, relative to folks that have been in business a long time, publishing business content, curating business content, LinkedIn is now a major player, in this area. So with that, I want to delve a little bit deeper into some of these properties and give you a little bit more color about the kinds of things that are popular, the kind of conversations that we are seeing within some of these content properties. So first, I'm going to start with a product that we're very proud of that we just launched a couple of weeks ago, and that's our LinkedIn Influencers product. And one of the things that's going to be important, throughout this presentation, I'm going to show you a lot of numbers. And most of the time, those are going to be big numbers to show off our scale, to show off our reach, to show off how much distribution we can help you get. But in this case, this is a relatively small number. We've started intentionally with 150 business luminaries. And these are folks that we went out and we handpicked. They're folks that are extremely high quality. You see the stats up here. We've got a MacArthur genius. Spoiler alert, that's not me. We've got people from all over the world, bestsellers, really a fantastic set of people that are participating. And actually, some of my favorite participants, actually, before I get to that, the key difference for those of you, by the way, who have not seen this, is it really allows them to do original, long-form content. So it actually goes way beyond 140 characters. People can come in with a what you see is what you get editor. They can put in rich media, and they can really communicate what's on their mind. They can really communicate these ideas. And so again, some of the people that I'm really most excited about, there's a lot of people out there that have a channel. They may be famous authors. They may be people with a television program. But my favorite part of the influencer program is that you have real operators. You have people in leadership roles today that, frankly, before this existed, really haven't had the time or the distribution in order to communicate a lot of the great stuff that they have. So I love reading from the CEO of IDEO. I love reading from the president of Intuit, because this is people that you don't normally hear from when they're still in their operating roles. And this is something that's really unique and that I personally, really, really appreciate. Some of the most popular forms of post come in the form of just very practical, very actionable advice. So in this case, Hunter Walk is a guy that ran YouTube for a long time over at Google. And in this particular post, he spends time talking about the interview process and what's wrong with the interview process, and some ideas about ways to be better at evaluating candidates that are coming in well beyond the interview process. And again, this is kind of, as we look at the numbers behind the kind of influencer posts that are getting traction, there's really a clear signal behind these posts that have just this very practical advice for business leaders like the folks in this room. I mentioned that it's not just text. We also have some rich media. And so I'm going to show you a video clip now. Many of you probably know Eric Ries, some of his writings. He focuses on kind of a different brand of a startup. He focuses on how few resources, in fact, it takes today to create a startup. But then he also started doing some analysis of big companies that are doing a great job at really building a startup within a startup. We've heard that term before. Some people sort of scoff when I say that, the startup within a startup. But he's found actually a couple of very unique examples, and I thought I'd share one of those from you today. This is a video that we've cut down.
I'm JB Brown, the Nordstrom Innovation Lab Manager, and this is the lab. We work on 1-week experiments. Somebody will have an idea and we'll find a way to figure out how to prove if the idea is going to work. And this week the Innovation Lab is going to be building an iPad app with customer feedback as we go through the week.
The software team shows up and builds an application in a surprise location. This is the Nordstrom Innovation Lab, and we're at the flagship store in downtown Seattle. Right now the team is just setting up their equipment to get started. We're going to build an iPad app that helps customers pick the best pair of sunglasses for them. We really don't know what the features are yet. We're going to use customer feedback as we go along throughout the day and the rest of the week in order to build the best thing.
Has anyone actually used the Nordstrom iPad app to pick sunglasses? No? I'm not sure it actually exists. I use my wife for that. If I come home and I haven't used my wife, I have a problem. So the last kind of content that's particularly powerful on LinkedIn, especially as part of this influencer program, I'll sort of call business wisdom. And so in this case, you have James Hahn, and he's talking about how important it is for us as leaders to really role model that we are human and that we make mistakes. And so as many people in the room can attest that work at LinkedIn, I'm particularly effective at this particular one. And that goes to show that you don't have to look like George Clooney to take advantage of some of the advice. No, nobody else sees it? Okay. Moving right along. So I want to switch gears now to our group. So that was influencers. Again, if you haven't already, please check out some of the posts. They're tremendously valuable. I've personally gotten a lot of value out of them. But the next category is groups. And groups has actually been around a lot longer, but it's evolved quite a bit. So now we have over 1 million groups on the LinkedIn platform. And the reason there's so many is there really is a group for everybody. And we look at the groups, we look at the names of the groups, we look at the people that are in the groups, and you see this incredible diversity. It's IT decision makers, it's business leaders, it's people in logistics. So just some really broad set of examples. And that's fantastic because the intent of the groups is to have very specific conversations around your particular profession. And we see these high quality conversations. Some of them are very strategic. And so in this case, you have a CIO asking a question around a strategy. And in this case, frankly, ITIL, I have no idea what that means. But that's the point. I wasn't invited to this group. And many of you in the room were probably not invited to this group. But it's valuable to the people that are in it because they're having conversations in their language, they're having conversations around the topics that are important to them. And in some cases, we see very tactical topics. In this case, seems less strategic to me, but a very specific product recommendation. And again, as we look by function, IT professionals, sales professionals, we see them again looking across to their peers, to their coworkers for advice to help them do a better job at the job that they have today. So next, our Slideshare acquisition. Earlier this year, we acquired Slideshare. The lingua franca today of business, like it or not, is basically PowerPoint presentations. I'm sure folks in the room build a lot of them, view even more of them. In this case, we were able to acquire the largest collection of PowerPoint presentations really on the planet. There's about 9 million of them there now. And again, you dig a little bit more deeply and you just see some fantastic content and you understand why this is potentially so powerful. So this is a particular deck, and for a particular week, this was one of the most shared decks on the platform. And it's about HTML5, and it starts to get into a little bit of detail about HTML5. And what you realize is for people in tech, this is how they're learning. This is how they're learning about what's next. The people that are doing HTML5 today, they're certainly learning by doing, but they're also learning by this kind of professional education. They're not going back to school and getting a degree in HTML5. They learn the basics in college, the basics of computer science, that is. But to keep fresh on today's technology, they're more and more using this kind of content to stay informed. And that's one particular reason why we thought this was a fantastic asset for us to bring in as part of the LinkedIn ecosystem. And the other thing is you really see a lot of companies participating in this, companies participating in this kind of education. And this is really where companies using content to create a message, using content to create influence, I think can be fantastic. Again, in this case, 43,000 views. It may not be as many views as the most recent K-pop video on YouTube. But again, there's not that many people on the planet that care about scaling Zen rack-based cloud servers. There's just not. So the beauty of what we're able to do at LinkedIn is take all this fantastic content, the 9 million decks that are up on Slideshare, and because of all the data we have, we can connect that information with the right people. We can use the graph, use the data that we have, and in the same way that you might target advertisements for us, all of our relevance algorithms do the same thing to connect this fantastic content with just the right users. So finally, LinkedIn Today. So LinkedIn Today is our news product. And it starts with our share button. But LinkedIn's share button is very different than the other share buttons you've experienced. So most share buttons, you click, and it does what it tells you it's going to do. It shares to your network. And so you can see news that's being read by the people that you're immediately connected with. But LinkedIn does one more thing that's very powerful. We know who is doing the clicking. We know where they work. We know their company size. We know their industry. We know their title. We know their education. And we can use all those signals to then create this very tailored content experience. So when I log into LinkedIn, I'm not just seeing content from people that I'm connected to. When I log into LinkedIn Today, when I read my news, I'm reading what's popular from other product managers. I'm reading what's popular from other folks in the internet industry, other folks in Silicon Valley. And again, sometimes to kind of, to truly appreciate this, you have to do what none of the rest of you are allowed to do, but it's to log into somebody else's account. And in this case, I grabbed my wife's computer, logged in her account, and was able to see the stark difference. When she wakes up in the morning, she sees the bottom article. She sees an article that would be targeted to a public relations executive. And I may be generous with my title up here, but when I log in, I'm seeing information that's targeted to me as someone that's consuming content, in Silicon Valley. So that difference of really having the data that we have behind all this is critically important. So what are the shifts on the platform that have caused this trend? So if over the past couple of years, we've gone from something that people think about as a place to connect to career opportunities to one of the largest business content publishers and distributors on the web, what was really behind that? Well, the first one, and you can remember the first slide I showed you, which was the 2005, LinkedIn. LinkedIn looks very different. Over the past year, we've spent quite a bit of effort to really simplify the experience and to create this rich feed-based homepage. And that's really made a big difference. That's put front and center the content both from publishers, the content from companies, and the content from marketers. So that's now front and center of the LinkedIn experience. The second primary change, and I've talked about this a little bit already, is the incredible amount of data that we have on LinkedIn. But one thing in particular that I wanted to share today, maybe a feature some of you are familiar with, and that's our recent Endorsements product. So our recent Endorsements product was literally launched just 2 months ago. And in that amount of time, we've had 400 million endorsements. Again, this is not people throwing sheep. These are people, I love throwing sheep. These are people going to someone else's profile and making a specific comment about a specific specialty or area of expertise they have 400 million times. So when you think about the vast amount of data that gives us to make a more relevant experience for our users, whether it's news, whether it's the content from those of you in the room, whether it's the influencer posts, we're able to use all this data, all the data from the profile, to really make this tailored experience. And that's a critical part of what we do. And so we have this quote about it taking off like brush fire. This was actually a quote from, I think, 2 days afterwards. So little did this guy know, I'm going to Vegas with Jeremiah. I'm not really going to Vegas. And last trend is mobile. So everybody in the room here, of course, knows about mobile, knows about the mobile trend. But this has actually been key to this transition of LinkedIn and content. And you saw this graph a little bit earlier today, but I'll take a few more minutes to explain it. So the green line here, so at the bottom what you see is time of day. And so the green line is showing how much usage we see as the site based on the time of day. Now, that's just all of our desktop usage. This is kind of what it looked like pre-mobile. Well, then you introduce mobile. And you start to see a very different trend. People start using it early in the morning, and then we see a lot more usage in the afternoon. So a big part of this is these mobile devices for us have opened up and helped fuel this very different use case around content, because those are two key times when people are engaging content. When folks are moving from meeting to meeting, they may not be checking on influencer posts or reading the news or reading content to get better at their job. But they are in the morning and they are in the evening. And so the move to mobile generally as a trend in the internet industry has really been fantastic for us at LinkedIn. So the last thing I want to touch on very briefly, and then I'm looking forward to introducing Mira, what does this mean for you guys? A couple things. So one, when you build a product to make people more productive and successful, you attract a bunch of people that are productive and successful. And so this chart here shows by buying power and income distribution what our audience looks like. And you can see, and this has really been true of LinkedIn for a long time, we continue to attract this fantastic audience. And one of the reasons we're most proud of that is that we're doing it at such incredible scale. To have a chart like this with the number of uniques that we have is something that we're especially proud of. And we believe it's happening because the type of people that are attracted to LinkedIn are trying to get better at the job that they're already in. They're coming to LinkedIn, and you've heard this term before, rather than spend time, that's not how they think about their interaction with us. They don't describe it time spent on LinkedIn. They invest their time on LinkedIn, again, to get better at what they do. So the last reason this is important is that this feed that we've created, this content ecosystem that we've created, is a fantastic opportunity for all the content that you guys have already built across various channels. We have the distribution engine, we have the professional network, and we have the data to get your content precisely in front of the right people. And we're not going to stop there. Once it's in front of the right person, we're going to make sure that those people have easy ways to share, to comment, to like, to really spread that through the professional graph.